What I'm holding here is a flamenco guitar. This is not a flamenco guitar. This is an acoustic guitar. Hey, I am Kai from Flamenco Explained, and today we're going to answer a question that we get asked a lot, which is what kind of guitar do I need to play flamenco? Obviously the answer is a flamenco guitar, but what does that mean? So we're going to look at what you want to be looking for when you're looking for a guitar, and specifically what to avoid. And before we do any of that, I want to say that right now, if you have a guitar, start with that one. There are things you want a flamenco guitar for, and you will want one if you get serious about flamenco, but you can start learning a lot of stuff with any guitar. What I'm holding here is a flamenco guitar, and I'm going to point out some of the things that make this a flamenco guitar. And most of them are sort of necessary for it to be a flamenco guitar, but some of them are not, and we'll talk about that too. So the most important thing that makes this a flamenco guitar is the fact that it has nylon strings. And it has 6 of them. So 6 nylon strings is the most important thing you want to have. Any classical guitar, any traditional standard classical guitar, I should say, that has 6 strings will also work to get you started really nicely, and I will show you what you might want to change about that. So how do we recognize a classical or flamenco guitar? How do we recognize that a guitar is a nylon string guitar rather than a steel string guitar or an electric guitar? Couple things. First of all, if you know what nylon strings look and sound like, that's a pretty dead giveaway, though you can put them on other guitars. So the things that make me know that this is a flamenco guitar or a nylon string guitar, besides obviously the strings themselves, the biggest giveaway is the bridge. The way we tie the strings at the end, we have these funny knots here. This is something that we use for nylon strings and not for steel strings. I'll show you in a minute what the bridge looks like on a guitar that's made for steel strings, and that's a really easy way to make sure that the guitar is a nylon string guitar made for nylon strings. There's nothing terrible about putting nylon strings on a steel string guitar. If you put steel strings on a nylon string guitar, you're putting more pressure than the guitar is made for on the guitar, so that's really not a good thing to do. So back to this bridge. One of the things that you'll notice is that this guitar has what we call a tie block, right? So the string goes through a little hole. There's actually 6 little holes. Some have more for different systems, but there's at least 6 little holes. The string goes through. We tie this funny knot here to keep the string in place. And you'll see how that's different from a steel string or an electric guitar in a minute. The other thing we want to look for is what kind of tuners or machine heads we have here. Now, some old flamenco guitars have friction pegs, so wooden pegs that go through the guitar like this, but most have mechanical machine heads, which means they have these slots and the rollers that go this way. As we're going to see in a sec, steel string guitars, electric guitars, they have a little post that comes this way that the string winds around. Classical, flamenco, nylon string guitars in general have a roller that goes this way that the string goes around. Some older and smaller acoustic guitars also have these slots, so that by itself doesn't tell you everything. They generally have a narrow metal roller rather than a sort of big plastic roller like these, and the old ones had bone rollers. So if you see these slots and these big rollers and mechanical machine heads, and you see the tie block here, this kind of bridge with the strings, then that's pretty much a dead giveaway that you're dealing with a nylon string guitar. So what makes it different from a classical guitar? That depends who you ask. One of the dead giveaways is that a lot of flamenco guitars have a tap plate, or a golpe, or a golpeador, depending on what you want to call it. But it's basically a film of transparent plastic. Older ones, you'll see white, you'll see black sometimes. Some were made out of wood, but the vast majority are clear plastic, right? And they are for when we tap the guitar, which I get into in some other videos. Why do we have it up here? 2 reasons. One is that the way we play flamenco, very often our thumbnail is here, and so we don't want to scratch this up. And then we also do this sometimes, so we actually hit the guitar up here. And that's why we have a big golpeador, a big tap plate. So if you see that, chances are it's either a flamenco guitar or someone's been using it for flamenco, which makes it a flamenco guitar. Originally, a flamenco guitar was just a cheap classical guitar. So they really are very similar instruments, the classical and the flamenco guitar. A traditional flamenco guitar has cypress for back and sides. We call this a blanca, a white guitar, right? A classical guitar traditionally has rosewood, which is a darker wood on the back and sides, although these days people are starting to use a lot of sustainable woods, a lot of different woods, because rosewood is getting harder to find and it's not a very sustainable wood. But as a broad generalization, if you see this color and it doesn't look like maple, that's a flamenco. If you see a darker one, it's either what we call a flamenca negra, which is a rosewood flamenco guitar, or it's a classical guitar. And then if you look at the tap plate, you can make a pretty educated guess. And of course, a lot of people will tell you that a good nylon string guitar or Spanish guitar is a good guitar. And if you lower the action a little, you can play flamenco on it. Raise the action a little, it's more appropriate for classical. But the bottom line is that any nylon string guitar with 6 strings is going to work. So don't get too hung up on this idea that you have to have a flamenco guitar. If you're not sure and it has nylon strings, you are good to get started. So let's take a minute and look at some other kinds of guitars which are not flamenco guitars and really not great for you to learn flamenco on. However, if you only have one of these kinds of guitars, get started. And if you love it, start looking for a flamenco guitar. This is not a flamenco guitar. This is an electric guitar, and there's some dead giveaways. One of them, it's blue. Another one, it's a really thin body made of solid wood, right? A classical guitar, a flamenco guitar, an acoustic guitar are all resonant chambers with a hole. We'll see that in a acoustic guitar in a minute. There are hollow body electric guitars, but a lot of electric guitars look more or less like this. This is a Stratocaster, a very famous kind of electric guitar. It's got pickups, right? That's one dead giveaway. It's not a flamenco guitar. It's got an interesting system for the strings where they actually go through the body of the guitar, and the strings have a little metal piece at the end that keeps it from going through the guitar. A whammy bar is a dead giveaway that it's not a flamenco guitar. And as I mentioned earlier, these kinds of tuners that come up this way and the string wraps around this way, not what we use for nylon string guitars. What can you do if this is the only kind of guitar you have? You can do a lot of stuff. You can learn all the chords. You can learn all kinds of positions for the left hand. You can, in fact, do a lot of stuff, but you're not going to hear it unless you're plugged in. And really, it's not the kind of instrument you're going to be playing flamenco on unless you are Ben Woods or you've bought one of his Nylocasters, which is a nylon string version of this guitar. It's an awesome thing if you're into metal and flamenco. Get one of those. This is an acoustic guitar. Now, technically, a flamenco or a classical guitar is also an acoustic guitar in that we don't have to plug it in. But when we say acoustic guitar, we generally mean an acoustic steel string guitar. It's a very different beast. What it has in common with a flamenco guitar is a fatter body, resonant chamber, sound hole, right? This one happens to be a 12 string. And again, I want to repeat, for flamenco, we want a 6-string guitar. For some reason, people have this idea that a 12 string is what you need to play flamenco. Not true. You want a 6-string guitar. The things that tell me that this is definitely made for steel strings and not for nylon strings are, first of all, as I mentioned earlier, this kind of bridge, right? For a flamenco guitar or a classical guitar, anything with nylon strings, we have this tie block with the hole that goes this way through, and we make a knot around it. For some electric guitars, as we saw, the string literally goes through the entire guitar, comes out. For these strings look like the strings for an electric guitar. They have a little metal ball at the end, and you insert that in here, and then you push this in, and that's what keeps the string in place. If you see this kind of bridge, not made for nylon strings. Also, as I mentioned before, these kinds of tuners that stick up this way and have the string wind around are not the kind that we use for nylon strings. These are made for steel strings, whether they're electric or acoustic strings, and really the difference is in tension. Acoustic strings are a little higher tension generally than electric, not always. And they sound different. So again, If you have a guitar that's more like this, whether it's 6 or 12 strings, you can start playing, absolutely, you know, you can strum chords, you'll hear them better than on an electric that's not plugged in. You can start getting used to what to do with your left hand, but you won't be able to really make use of all the techniques in the right hand that we use when we play flamenco. So you really want to look for a good nylon string guitar to get started. So to recap, what we're looking for is a nylon string guitar. First, that's kind of our minimum requirement, although you can get started on any guitar. This kind of bridge, nylon strings are a good giveaway. This kind of tuner to make sure that it's a nylon string guitar. And then if you're going to play flamenco on it, does it have a tap plate? If not, you can buy a tap plate and have someone put it on. I recommend having someone who's done it before do it, because once it's on, it's hard to take off. And like the film on your phone to protect it, if you get bubbles under there, it doesn't come off as easily as the thing on your phone does. It actually rips off the finish. So if you have one that's permanent, think about having a professional put that on for you. But there are also some brands of removable ones. So that you just sort of put on instead. It keeps it in place and it protects your guitar, because otherwise you can literally make a hole here, or, you know, really wear away at the wood, because you're going to have these hard fingernails hitting the guitar all the time. For it to be a proper flamenco guitar, the action's going to be a little lower. The action of a guitar is how high the strings are in relation to the fretboard and to the top of the guitar here. The further away the strings are, so by higher I mean out this way, and by lower I mean closer to the fretboard, the higher they are, the harder it is to play for the left hand. You get more resistance as the action comes up, and by up we mean away from the instrument itself. You get more resistance, which gives you more volume, and it gives you a cleaner sound, which is something that classical players really want. In flamenco, we're accustomed and we actually want a little bit of a gritty sound, so it's okay to have the action lower, and that makes it faster, right? Which means it's easier to play. But there's a delicate balance, because if it's super easy for the left hand because everything's really loose and super fast, it might be too soft for the right hand. And then string tension comes into play. So these are sort of advanced things that you'll get into. But if your guitar is uncomfortable, even though it's a flamenco guitar or a classical guitar, and you're thinking to yourself, I got the guitar he said to get, but it's really hard to play, you might check with someone and see if you need a lower tension string, or if maybe the action can come down. And the action can come down in two places, here at the saddle or here at the nut. These are both adjustable pieces of plastic or bone, which means they can be lowered. And once they've been lowered, the only way to raise them again is either to put something under them that we call a shim, or to actually have a new one made. It's really important. It can make the difference between a guitar sounding and feeling really good or sounding and feeling okay. And it's something that if you don't know to look for, you wouldn't look for. Whether you've found your guitar already or not, if you're watching this, it's probably because you want to learn flamenco guitar. So check out our Learn Flamenco Guitar, the Ultimate Guide course at flamencoexplained.com, where you can learn flamenco guitar.